Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be another declutter. I'm going to be going through and decluttering all of my concealers. I just did my foundations, which are in the same drawer, so I'll link that video in the description box below if you want to check that out, but I need to go through and get rid of some of these. I love a good concealer. I feel like last year was kind of the year of concealers, and I did try out a few more formulas than I normally would, and I definitely discovered some new favorites, so because of that, I want to take out concealers that I'm no longer reaching for as much. Maybe formulas that just don't work for me any longer, shades that aren't a great match, and then if I have anything that's old or expired, I will declutter that as well. I don't have a specific number in mind, I just know that I probably have too many. I'm not using all of these super regularly, so it's just time to cut it down a little bit. So if you like declutter videos, I would love for you to subscribe. I'm planning on uploading a new one, maybe like every other week over the next few months. So let me know what you want to see next on my channel and let's get started. Okay, so let me start with some of my go-to formulas. The Natasha Denona High Glam Concealer is one of my absolute favorites. It is so beautiful, very creamy, amazing coverage, stays in place incredibly well. I actually have two, so I normally wear the shade N4, and I needed to repurchase it once, and I was kind of going through the shades online, and I was like, maybe I'll try N3. Okay, this one is N4, this one is N3. I don't know why I even messed with it. I think I thought N3 would just be like a slight touch lighter, but it actually ends up looking a little bit darker on my skin tone. So I don't really end up using it because under the eyes, it's a little bit too dark. As a spot concealer, it's a little bit too dark, and I always end up going for N4. Part of me is like, just keep it. You have it. It's expensive. Make it work. But truthfully, like it looks that much darker on my skin that I don't end up using it. So sadly, I bought the wrong shade. I guess I could have returned it initially, but I had it for so long and I was like, I'll just keep it. Anyway, all of that being said, I really don't prefer the way it looks. So I'm going to pass N4 along to someone else. It is such a good concealer. Maybe my mom or one of my sisters would like it. Another one of my go-to formulas that I actually have two shades in is from Tower 28. This is their serum concealer. It is so gorgeous. It's definitely thinner than Natasha Denona, a little bit more hydrating, but it has really good coverage too. So I have DTLA and then I also have EP. DTLA is the shade that I wear. EP is probably a little bit closer to my skin tone, and I probably could make it work. So on the left is DTLA and then on the right is EP. And again, I feel like if you're using a concealer that's a little bit too dark under the eyes, it almost creates the illusion of dark under eye circles, which is kind of the opposite of what I'm going for. So unfortunately, I have to declutter that one as well. But again, both of my sisters have darker skin tones than me, so I feel like one of them will be able to get use out of that too. And then the other one in my top three, other than those two, is the Catrice True Skin. This is such a good formula. I have found my perfect shade in this one, so this is the one that I continuously repurchase. It's in the shade Cool Cashmere. This is probably the most similar to Tower 28. It's very thin, very, very hydrating. It has really, really good coverage. I would say this one maybe feels slightly thicker than Tower 28, and the coverage is just a little bit better, but it is so comfortable on the skin. Even if you're not a fan of the True Skin foundation, I do recommend trying the True Skin concealer. They're different formulas. This really does feel like a high-end, even like luxury formula. It's so gorgeous, but I believe it's $8, so really affordable. The rest of the concealers in here, like there are formulas that I really like, but I don't feel as strongly about any other formula as I do the ones I just shared with you. So I actually have two concealers from Saie. This was their first launch. It is called the Hydra Beam. I don't hear anyone talk about this anymore. When it first came out, I did enjoy it, but it definitely isn't a formula that I wear very often, and I like their newer formula a little bit better. So I'm actually going to declutter this. This one is in the shade 2. This is probably one of the glowiest concealers I've tried. It doesn't have shimmer in it, but it has like a definite glow to it. Like you'll be able to see. It almost looks very luminous under the eyes. So if that is the type of look you would typically go for, you might really like this one. It's pretty thin. It doesn't feel heavy or cakey. I would say it settles into fine lines, maybe a little bit worse than other concealers I've tried, but it's really, really comfortable. I feel like it almost has a little bit of an oily feel to it. So I do think this is more ideal if you have dry skin and you deal with like texture because of dryness under your eyes specifically. I am going to declutter this one after trying Tower 28 and after really loving the Catrice one. I just don't think this is the type of glowy concealer I'm going for. I want something that feels hydrating but doesn't necessarily have like such intense luminosity to it. Like I said, they came out with a new one. This is their Slip Tint Concealer. I have the shade 4. I don't know that this will always stay in my collection. It is something that I'm enjoying right now in a very specific way. I do think it's overhyped for sure. People were acting like this was a life-changing concealer. And you know what? Like, you think I would know better at this point. Sometimes I fall into the hype, sometimes I don't, but I just don't love this as much as other people do. Again, it has a nice glow to it. It looks better under these lights than it actually does on the skin. I like to set my lights up in this way because I do think it kind of shows the finish of the concealer better than it would if it was like a duller setting. But sometimes products swatch better or worse than they actually are, and this is a case of a product that swatches better. On the skin, you do get that brightness, you get like that glow, but it does settle pretty badly and it doesn't last on my skin. It breaks apart by the end of the day. So again, I feel like with a hydrating glowy concealer, I don't always want something or need something that has like a luminosity to it. I just want more of like a creamy hydrated feel. That being said, this looks amazing in the inner corners because I tend to blend my eyeshadow in a way that sometimes it looks a little bit dark in that area. So after I do my makeup, I might go in with like a tiny bit of this in that area. And if I don't want like a really intense, stark, like beaming highlighter, but I want a little bit of brightness, that's when I use this. Because of that, I feel like I actually could declutter this Rare Beauty product. And I do like this, but I don't know that I need both of these. This is their under eye brightener in the shade Light. So technically this is not a concealer. You could use it in place of concealer. You could use it alongside of concealer, but it's a different type of formula. It has this interesting applicator. It's basically like a metal applicator, so it feels really good. And it really does look so interesting on the skin. Like it really works to brighten up your under eyes. So I do think it is a little bit more unique than a typical concealer. There's not a ton of coverage. So if you are someone who has a lot of dark under eye circles or you need color correction, this is not going to be an ideal product. But if you're someone who tends to go very light with your makeup, if you wear skin tints, if you skip foundation and you just want like a little something to kind of brighten up your eyes, this is a nice product. That being said, I feel like the Saie concealer gives a very similar effect, but I like the fact that it has coverage to it because it can kind of erase some of that eyeshadow if I blend a little bit too much in. So I feel like I can declutter this at this point. It's a nice product. I mean, part of me is like, I would love to keep it on hand, but I just don't reach for it as much as I did when I first got it. I think I'm actually going to declutter this product as well. This is very, very old. I don't always get rid of products just because I've had them for a long time, because sometimes formulas do last longer than you would expect, but it's hard to tell with this because of the packaging. This is from e.l.f. It's their Flawless Brightening Concealer. I have 2 different shades. I think this formula is amazing, and it's probably something I would repurchase down the road. It's just not something that I'm reaching for a lot lately. The lighter shade is Fair 15W. The darker shade is Light 26N. I think this product is still around. I know that e.l.f. kind of focuses more on their camo concealers, but I do think a lot of people would really enjoy this because it is such a light coverage product. Again, this is for those of you that don't really have a ton of darkness under the eyes. If you don't need a lot of coverage, you might like this type of product. It's very light, very natural on the skin. It's not overly glowy by any means. It is the type of product that will settle into fine lines a little bit faster than other concealers because it is so thin, but this is nice if you're someone who likes a true light coverage, light feeling concealer. These days, I do prefer something that leans more so in like the medium coverage range, just because if I'm going to wear concealer, I usually want it to make a little bit of a difference. So I'm just not using this very much. And it's just not something I've reached for a lot over the past year. And because it is getting old, like I've had this for years and years, I feel like it is time to part with it. Okay, let's talk about some concealers I'm keeping. So I have 2 of these. Are these the same shade? They're not. So I have vanilla and beige. This is the NYX Bare With Me Concealer Serum. Now I don't know which shade I wear. I almost feel like maybe I was reaching for these interchangeably, thinking it was the same product. Let me swatch it next to each other. This is actually like a rediscovered favorite. I put this in my everyday makeup drawer, I think for spring. And if you're new to my channel, I do this series called My Everyday Makeup Drawer. I've been doing it for years, like ever since I started my YouTube channel. And I switch up my makeup seasonally. So it basically gives me the chance to kind of rotate through everything in my collection. And it's just a good way to make sure I'm using everything and kind of keeping things in check. And that way I can, both rediscover older formulas, but also just kind of work my way through everything so I don't get stuck on the same products. Okay, so this one is vanilla and this one is beige. I'm going to keep vanilla. I feel like that one is the more ideal shade match for me. I like my concealer to be just slightly lighter than my skin tone, and I feel like this one is too dark. It is such a gorgeous formula, and again, I feel like it is something that kind of gets lost in my collection, and it is partly the packaging. I do prefer more of like a traditional doe foot style concealer. Sometimes with this one, I feel like I just pump out too much and I just have to like apply it with my fingers, and I'm not always in the mood to do that. But when I do use it, I'm always happy with it because it looks so good. It's very smooth, very creamy, really good coverage, and it stays in place well. So I'm going to keep one and then declutter the darker shade. I have 2 shades of this too. Like sometimes with foundation, I like to keep 2 shades on hand. And if you saw my foundation declutter, I maybe ended up with like slightly more than I wanted because 6 of them I have 2 different shades of. But usually with foundation, I feel like I like to mix it to get my perfect shade. With concealer, if I have 2 shades, I'll go with the lighter one just because I usually do prefer a little bit of a brighter finish. So I do have 2 of these. This is the Makeup Revolution IRL Filter Finish Soft Matte Concealer. This was one of my favorites from last year, and it's really, really gorgeous. Very light, super comfortable. I know, did this come out after the foundation? I think it might have. So I feel like this did not get the hype it deserved because a lot of people didn't like the foundation. But sometimes foundations and concealers, even though they have like the same name, they're part of the same line, they feel very different. And I feel like that's the case with this. Oh, this is why this one throws me off, because 6.5 is a lot lighter than 6. It's not really even close. So on the left is 6, and then on the right is 6.5. 6.5 is way too light for me. I think ideally I wanted a shade just like a tiny bit lighter than this, but even when I mix them together, like this one is so bright, it ends up changing it a little bit too much. So I'm going to declutter 6.5 and then keep 6. But again, such a good formula. It's so smooth. It does have a true matte finish. So if you're a fan of matte concealers, this is such a good option. If you have oily skin, if it's hot outside and you want something that will, dry down to a true matte finish, this is gorgeous. It stays in place really well, but it's very light, really, really comfortable. So again, I'm going to keep 6 and then declutter 6.5. This one is actually in my everyday makeup drawer for summer. It's the JCat Beauty Stay Assurance Water Sealed Zero Smudge Concealer. This one really does stay in place well. Like its big claim is that it doesn't move, it doesn't budge. And all concealers are going to crease if you have lines under your eyes. It's kind of inevitable. But some concealers definitely crease worse than others, whether it is initially or throughout the day, and some stay in place a lot better than others. This one is in the shade Buff. This is a formula that I actually find lasts really, really well. And I do have a lot of fine lines under my eyes, just I don't even know why I refer to them as that full-on wrinkles, and that's fine. But again, I feel like if a concealer really settles into them worse than others, sometimes it just kind of gives the appearance that I'm like extra tired. So I do like this one because, you can even tell on my hand how smooth it looks. It just wears so well and it looks so good on the skin. So definitely another rediscovered favorite. I'm hanging on to that one for sure. This is from Kosas. It is the Revealer Concealer. I feel like this one is almost gone. This one's in the shade 3.5W, and I was mainly using this as a spot concealer. I feel like it's just a little bit too dark for me. I have repurchased this concealer in so many different shades, and I feel like I still have not found my perfect shade. I probably need to go with the shade 3. 3.5W is just a little bit too dark, a little bit too warm, but because I was using it as a spot concealer, it didn't really matter because I would go over it with foundation anyway. These days, I have not been going in with spot concealer because in the summertime, I just don't want to layer too much on my skin. I'd rather just stick with like a foundation, and then if, anything's kind of showing through, I'll either build the foundation or just skip it and deal with it. I do think this is a really beautiful formula. I do like it under the eyes, but again, because this one is slightly too warm, I don't tend to wear this one under the eyes very much. I am going to declutter this one because it's basically empty and I haven't reached for it a lot over the last few months. And Kosas products do not last forever because they are a clean beauty brand. They don't use a lot of the same preservatives other brands do, so it's probably time to get rid of that one anyway. But I am going to add a slightly lighter shade to my Sephora Loves list. This is the Too Faced Born This Way concealer. This is also in my everyday makeup drawer for summer. I've had this again for what feels like forever. This is such a large concealer. It comes with 0.5 fluid ounces, which is why I feel like it does last a really long time. I think I've gone through maybe 1 or 2 of these, and this for a little while was like my staple go-to. And I do miss wearing it, but again, I feel like it's just slightly too dark. I probably could go with one shade lighter. I don't know. Sometimes I'll wear this as actual foundation too, or in place of foundation because it looks so good on the skin. It has the most perfect satin finish. It is so lightweight. Again, I think I said this with other concealers or maybe my foundations. Some of these products feel like they were almost ahead of their time. When this product came out, everyone was in love with the Tarte Shape Tape. So I feel like because this one was a little bit thinner, a little lighter, it wasn't quite as popular, but I do love this. It looks amazing on the skin, and it's definitely something I'm going to keep. Okay, I do have 2 shades of the Milani concealer as well. I have light nude and then light vanilla. So light nude is 115, light vanilla is 120. On the left is 115, on the right is 120. Oh, I can't decide between these. I feel like 115 is a little bit too light, but 120 is maybe a little bit darker than I would typically love for an under eye concealer. I honestly don't know. I might end up keeping both of these shades and just mixing them together because I feel like it is kind of a little bit of a close call. I mean, it's not really that dramatic. I think I'll just keep both of these because I'm not sure which one I tend to reach for more, just because that is not currently my most used concealer, but I do still really love it. I tend to use that one a little bit more in the fall and the winter. I also have 2 of these. This is the Typology concealer. I know the shade light. I have fair and then I also have light. I know the shade light is a little bit too dark, but I mean, I have kind of mixed them together before. I think I'm just going to keep the shade fair. On the left is 1, which is fair, and then on the right is 2, which is light. I think I'll send 2 to my sister. I've told you in a couple of videos, I think, that I got her hooked on the Typology Tinted Serum, but maybe she'll like the concealer too. This one's a little bit too dark for me. I have mixed them, but I do feel like I could just get away with 1. I don't really need both of them. And if I really want to lighten it up, or if I want to darken it up a little bit, I can use any of the other concealers I have. This concealer is from LYS Beauty. I am going to declutter this as well. I did declutter the LYS Beauty foundation. It's getting a little bit old and I feel like it has expired because the formula has separated. I think I repurchased this since I've purchased the foundation, so I don't think it's as old as the foundation. But again, with trying a couple of new formulas last year, I've just found other formulas I tend to prefer to this one. This is very, very lightweight, very hydrating, very comfortable, but I just feel like I usually want a little bit more coverage. So there are other formulas and other shades in my collection I end up reaching for more than this one. Not a bad formula. It's a great option if you want something very, very light. But again, there are other things that I tend to prefer over that. This is from Flower Beauty. It's their Get Real Serum Concealer. I feel like this is actually kind of similar to LYS Beauty, but slightly thicker and a little bit better coverage. I have the shade Vanilla. Yeah, I feel like that is the perfect description. Like if you've tried the LYS formula and that one's maybe just slightly too thin for you, you want something that has a little bit more substance to it, a little more coverage, this is a great option. This was one of my favorite launches of 2023, and I still think it is a really beautiful formula. It's very creamy, very, very comfortable, just like a good everyday formula. This is from NYX. It's their Pro Fix Stick Correcting Concealer. I think I have 2 different shades, and now I don't know where the other one is. Yeah, I was probably talking about it in a video. This is the shade Alabaster. I ended up buying it in a different shade because Alabaster is a little bit too light for me. So I am going to declutter this one. I forget what the other shade I have is called. And I thought I had all my concealers in here, but you know what? I was going to film like a TikTok or an Instagram on some of my favorite drugstore launches, and that's probably where this one is, in the other shade. It's such a good spot concealer because it basically melts into the skin. I used to have this Makeup Forever concealer palette years ago, like I'm talking like 10 years ago, that I would use to spot conceal before I went in with foundation, and that's what this reminds me of in stick form. So if I have a lot of scarring, a lot of breakouts, I'll just take this and kind of tap it on those areas, and it helps to camouflage them in a way that's very natural, and this sits really well under foundation. I don't love it as much as an under eye concealer just because it's not quite as hydrating or creamy as I would like, but it does still look good under the eyes. Like it surprises me when I wear it. I'm almost done. I'm going to switch and put all of the concealers that I'm keeping in here and then go through the ones that I have left. This is the Urban Decay Stay Naked Quickie Concealer. I still love this. I feel like this got a lot of hype when it first launched and then everyone stopped talking about it. I feel like mine is kind of coming close to the end, so I should probably make an attempt to use it up fully because I have had it for a little while. Maybe I'll do that. I don't do like full-on Project Pan videos anymore, but I do it kind of unofficially. Like if a product is close to being used up, then I'll make an effort to use it up fully. This just looks really good on the skin. I feel like this is the type of concealer I like to use in place of foundation. Like if I'm in a hurry, I'll swipe this on, blend it in, and it lasts so well. But again, because it is a little bit thinner, it's very comfortable on the skin, and it just has like a nice skin-like finish to it. It's not too glowy, it's not too matte, it doesn't enhance texture. It's just like a good all-around product. I like this better than the Stay Naked foundation. I almost wish this was the texture of the foundation. But again, I feel like you get a lot of product in here, 0.55 fluid ounces, so even more than the Too Faced one. So if you want to use it as foundation, you totally could, and you're not going to run through it quite as fast. I think I already talked about this Flower Beauty one. This is from e.l.f. It is the 16-hour camo concealer in the shade Light Sand. I think I ended up decluttering the hydrating version because mine had gone bad. And I don't know, I used to love both this one and the hydrating version. And again, I feel like other brands have just released products I tend to reach for a little bit more. I usually keep this on hand in case I'm doing like a full face of e.l.f. or like a video on my e.l.f. favorites, but I don't know that I really need to. I can't remember the last time I wore this. I feel like it's just a little bit too matte for my preferences these days. I mean, you can see it doesn't even have to dry down. Like it has a fully matte finish. So if you have very oily skin or that's what you prefer with concealer, I think that is a great option. It's really affordable. It's just not my type of go-to these days. And then these are from Merit. These are actually foundations and I do use them as foundation. You could use them as concealer, as spot concealers. You can use them in a lot of different ways, but generally I do use them as foundation. I think they're just sitting in here because they've made their way into my concealer section. On the left is Silk and then on the right is Bisque. So I mix these together, which is kind of the case with a lot of my foundations. Nothing ever really fits perfectly. So if it is a formula I love, I don't mind having two on hand. That really is like the perfect shade match. I had Bisque and at one time I was wearing that. So I feel like maybe my skin was slightly tan. So I bought Silk knowing it was way too light, just figuring that I could mix them together. So again, not concealers, although they are kind of similar to that NYX stick concealer formula, so you could use them in that way. Okay, so I feel like my concealer declutter was really, really successful. I'm definitely happy with how this turned out. Here's a look at my concealer collection before, and then here's a look afterwards. These are all of the ones I'm keeping. Okay, so I'm keeping 13 and I'm decluttering 14, so about 50-50, which is a lot for me. I don't usually have a goal in mind when it comes to decluttering anymore. I used to when I felt like my collection was maybe a little bit more out of hand, and that might be the case as I move along into the different categories because there are some categories where I don't tend to keep it as curated, like lip gloss, lipstick, but in this case, I really just wanted to remove the products that I was not reaching for regularly, so I feel really good about that because now looking at my concealer collection, like these are formulas and shades I love. I could reach for any of these and be completely happy. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned. I would love for you to subscribe. I'll be having more declutter videos very soon. In the meantime, I'll put a couple on the screen for you in case you're interested in checking out some more declutter videos that are already up on my channel. And I'll see you very soon with a new one. Bye.